series of conversation today and exploring ideas around climate smart education, sustainability, partnership innovation, and the collective effort needed to build a better future. Now, as we come to our final session, we have an opportunity not only to reflect on what we have heard, but also to think about how we can translate these ideas into meaningful actions. So, I will be inviting Mr. I will be inviting our first speaker, Mr. Ayomipo Ademolusi, founder and executive director, Smart Impact Network, Minute Nigeria. If you are here, please, the floor is yours. Are you here? Mr. Ayomipo Ademolusi, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Can you please speak loud because I can't hear you over here?
Hi, yeah. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Please, the floor is yours
All
now.
right. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Faith, Augustine, and good evening, of course, the world, the global South. Good evening, Africa. Good evening, Nigeria, and good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here once again. I'm Ayomipo Ademilusi. Yeah, like Faith mentioned, I'm the founder of Smart Impact Network, and of course, I also run a research and sustainable development institute, RSD. Yeah, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Um, Faith, please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, please.
All right, please let me know. Is there something you need me to respond to? Hello, I'm with you.
Why? Yes, I have a question for you here. I have a question for you
All right,
here.
please go
Okay.
on.
The first question here is, why should educators be considered climate leaders?
All right. Thank you very much. Yes. Now, so why should educators be considered climate leaders? Now, we have to break down these things into keywords. We have educators, then we have climate leaders. Now, when you say an educator, who is an educator? An educator is somebody that, let me say, in the simplest form, that teaches or that guides a set of people. It can be students or whatever. That guides a set of people into something, into understanding a particular framework, a particular concept or something. So, largely speaking, when you say leaders, now who is a leader? A leader is somebody, in the simplest form, a leader is an example. So they would say lead by example. That is, you are somebody or you are something that guides other things into something. So to say, we can say educators are leaders in their own right. So when you now put it into climate, obviously, if educators are people that guide others into something, that means they are leaders actually. And then that means they are actually climate leaders. Why? Not necessarily because they are scientists or maybe environmental climate scientists, but because educators guide people into understanding something that is very important, especially challenges within life. And of course, we know that climate change remains a global challenge across the world, not just only for whether the global north or the global south alone, but across communities, whether rural, urban communities. And you'd know that, or you agree that every community is faced with one kind of environmental or climate challenge, with one or the other, either flooding, heat, waves, fires, and all of these things, temperature, and all of these things. So, largely speaking, educators are climate leaders. Why? Because educators are primarily meant to be that, meant to be people. people who guide others into something. And then we
Okay.
can
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ayomipo. Thank you very much. Please, I want to be sure that Navila Alensa, the CEO, African Climate and Environment Foundation, is here with us too. Please, I want to confirm if she's here. He or she is here with us. Or Mariel Precious Joy, Gaddle's youth representative, the Philippine. Is she here with us too?
Hi, good morning from the Philippines. Yes, I am here.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Precious. And also want to confirm if Olatunji Olawimpo Sustainability and Climate Literacy lead initiative lead initiative for climate literacy in Nigeria. Please confirm if you are here with us.
Good
You
evening. I hope you can hear me.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So I
Yes,
have three of you. I have three of you on the call as my panelists. So I will be asking you, Mr. Olawipo. Sorry, if I murder your
yes,
name. I'm
allow
sorry
it.
about
Yes,
that.
allow it for. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so I will be asking you this question. What support do teachers need to confidently teach climate change and lead climate action? What support do teachers need to confidently teach climate change and lead action?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Want to confirm you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, I did hear you.
Okay. So I'm glad to be here, and thank you for everyone that's spoken earlier. I listen in to be able to just get the perspective from everyone. So what I will say and answer to your question that you asked is this: the traditional educational system is one that has actually exclude education for sustainable development and global citizenship into it. It has excluded it. So what it means is that most teachers and educators that we have today, they are largely, trained based on what is traditional. And what is traditional does not have, the effect of what is happening to the climate inculcated in it. So what that means is that every citizen around the world, we are literally playing catch up. To say while I was in school, I didn't hear anything about the climate crisis. And so I left school and then entered into the labor force, as a worker. And then I'm now getting to know that, the climate crisis is affecting every part of our economy. And so it's at that point I will now begin to learn about the climate and climate issues newly. So what that means is that if only educators have been informed in the process of their training, which is where education for sustainable development and global citizenship, which is actually target 4.7 of the SDGs. That's what it speaks to. So what that now means is that because educators are already aware and aware of all of this, then they become, an instrument to be able to impact every other person that is a learner. You get what I mean? So what that means is that every person, because educators are already aware and they are equipped with the right
Yes,
information,
we can hear you.
of the world, being a global village at this time, then they'll be able to pass that same knowledge, that same understanding across to every, learner and everyone that come across them. You get what I mean? So what that now means is this: because we are also in an environment because we're also in an environment that also have separated what we call the green economy and then the blue economy. What that means is that we speak to SDG 14 that talks about life that is, below water, and SG 15 that speaks to life on land. So what that means is that both life on land and life below water, there is an understanding of what is happening in those spaces, which educators need to be aware of. But what it means is that educators, when they were trained themselves, are not aware. There will continually be a gap. And that's why in this conversation, the role of educators is so pivotal, to say every educator have to now, have an updated knowledge and updated understanding regarding what they are doing as educators. And that's why, for example, in Nigeria, as we speak now, only a few schools, a few higher institutions have inculcated sustainability into every of the courses that they have, because the issue of the climate crisis cuts across disciplines beyond just the environment, or those who are educated as educated as environmentalists, or people whose work deals with matters that relates to the geography or the environment. You get what I mean? So it has cut across disciplines,
All right.
from accounting to
Okay, thank
economics.
you very
Yeah,
much.
so that's
How
what
must
I
an
would say in
educator
that regard. Yeah.
do? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so very much, Mr. Olawipo, sorry. And this question goes to Madam Mariel Precious Joy. Um, how can educators transform climate education from a theoretical subject into a practical community action? Mr.
Hi
Mariel, are
again.
you with
So,
us?
yes.
Can I take the
Uh,
question again?
Note, I read the question. I heard the question very well.
All right.
So good morning. It's almost 3:15 a.m. in the Philippines. So, uh, I guess my answer to that question, I'm coming from the perspective of an educator. So as an educator, I have learned the importance of making lessons meaningful by connecting them to students' personal experiences and the issues they see in their own communities. This can spark their interest and encourage them to move from simply learning about climate issues to taking practical action. I recently learned about the solutionary framework. I recently learned about uh, solutionary framework, which I believe can be a powerful approach to this. It encourages students to explore issues that matter to them, understand the causes behind these problems, and identify solutions that do the most good and least harm. By using a solutionary lens, students can start with the local concern while developing a deeper understanding of its wider global connections. In this way, climate education becomes more than a theoretical subject. It becomes an opportunity for students to become problem solvers, innovators, and active participants in creating positive change in their communities. I think that would be all on my end.
Thank you very much, Madam Mariel. Thank you so very much. And Mr. Ayomipo, the next question comes to you. Um, the next question is, how can education institution project and support teachers who are leading innovative climate initiatives? How can education institution project and support teachers who are leading innovative climate initiative? Mr. Ayomipo, the question is yours now.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks so much, madam. Yeah. Thanks so much for that question. All right. Just in like maybe some seconds, I just want to add to what she said earlier on about the, how to bridge the gap between theoretical and then action, and then I'll take the question to take also. So I think another thing, in addition to what she said, is can bridge that gap through research, and then of course, when you have theories and then you have action, but there is a midpoint that bridges this. skills. And I think research can come into play where students research and then make their measurable impact, which will actually flow into them taking action. So I just wanted to quickly chip that in. I think what is lacking for now is the aspect of bridging the gap between the theoretical and the action. Now, question that how can teachers, education institutions protect and support teachers? I think very important. We have institutional support, and of course, we have other forms of support. At least one to start with, educators or teachers now can be supported when it comes to one through recognition. Yes, of course. For example, in Nigeria, I know of some. Of course, myself, I'm a teacher, so and which is something I do. I do climate programs, education programs on radio stations and so on. I go to schools to teach students and so on. And of course, in Lagos and so on, I have some people who are at least acquaintances I know that they are into climate climate activities action with their students. They do it with their students and so on. And I think one thing that stands out or that can help and then enhance their work is recognition. Yes, sometimes you see some of these teachers. I think there was one that got an award as sustainability teacher or something. Yeah, something like that drives. In economics they will say people respond to incentives. So there should be incentives in terms of maybe recognition, giving of grants to teachers to support activities. Yes, there are teachers or educators actually that they undertake maybe school waste management programs with their students. Some of them have farms in the school and they encourage the student, they work with the student to manage the farms. I mean sustainable farming, waste management within school, but they need funds. Of course, they need resources to make those things work because beyond the salary they are collecting, they can't use their salaries to propagate those activities. So they need funding, maybe small grant for teachers. They need recognition. Whenever they do stuff like that, maybe the Department of Education should recognize what they have done. It will encourage the ones that are doing it and even other ones to do it. And of course, teachers should be given the time and the institutional backing. There are teachers that are into sustainability issues. You can create time for them to engage the students in those things. If they use all the days at work to have to teach physics, chemistry, biology, they will have no time to do all of those. So there might be little time given to teachers who have shown interest to propagate those actions with the student. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so very much, Mr. Ayomipo. And my next question goes to Mr. Ola Olawipo. Sorry about that. Okay, my question to you is, what barriers prevent educators from becoming more active climate leaders? What barriers prevent educators from becoming more active leaders?
Okay. Okay, thanks again. You see, for me to respond to that question, what I will say is that the barrier that I see is that most educators, they separate the issue of the climate crisis from what they do. Like the last speaker mentioned, a chemistry teacher, a geography teacher, a chemistry biology teacher, a teacher that teaches law. They separate issue of the climate crisis, when you compare it with their discipline, they separate it. Is that it doesn't have anything to do with it because they can't see the connection. And that's why, what is going on right now across schools is a conversation around incorporating the issues around the climate crisis and sustainability related issues into every discipline, all discipline. And it is when that is done, again, that is what we are referring to when we talk about education for sustainable development and global citizenship. You get what I mean? And so if that is done, it makes everything easy for everyone. I give you an example. SDG 12 speak to sustainable consumption and production. There is no way that will be achieved if a medical doctor for example, that uses the conventional syringe and needle to be able to give an injection. You get what I mean? He's not looking at that syringe and injection and start thinking about how can that product, after usage, how can they be thinking of recycling that product rather than that product going to landfill after usage? You get what I mean? That is the only way.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
what that means is that when that happens, that's when a typical medical doctor will now understand why all of what we are talking about as relates to sustainability and sustainability related matters, how it concerns them as medical doctors. So in the same vein, those who are teaching medical doctors in the medical school, they will now understand that sustainability matters and issues around the climate crisis is not very far from them. Rather, their discipline also need to champion it. You get what I mean? So, and it is when that is
Yeah.
done, that is when we'll be able to win this win. So that's what I'm going to say. If you have any other question for
All
me,
right.
I'm
Thank you very much.
open.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Mr. Olatunji. Thank you so very much. My next question goes to Madam Mariel Precious Joy. Are you still with us?
Yes.
All right. All right. Okay. This is concerning leadership and youth. How can teachers help students see themselves as problem solvers rather than victims of climate change? How can teachers help students to see themselves as problem solvers rather than victims of climate change?
Thank you so much for the question. To be honest, we cannot blame students for feeling like victims of climate change, especially when many of the actions that have contributed to today's environmental crisis were made by previous generations. A Filipino song, Kapaligiran, if you're familiar, if you can check it out later, the title is Kapaligiran. In English, it means environment. So, for example, the song vividly depicts how our environment has been damaged over time. As educators, this is where our role and power become important. We can empower students to see themselves not only as those who will inherit the problem, but also as problem solvers who can be part of the solution. We can normalize conversations about climate issues inside the classroom and create safe spaces where students can express how they see and feel about these issues by adopting approaches such as the solutionary framework, as I mentioned it earlier. We can guide students to look beyond the problems, explore the root causes, and develop solutions that can create meaningful change in their communities. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Madam Mariel. Thank you. And my next question comes back to you, Mr. Ayomipo Ademolusi. My next question comes back to you, still under leadership and youth. What role can educators play in connecting youth people to green career and entrepreneurship? What role can educators play in connecting young people rather to green careers and entrepreneurship?
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. God bless. Thanks for the question. Wonderful question. And those to everybody on the panel. We've been, doing a great work so far. Now, largely speaking, how can educators now, what role can they play in connecting young people to, entrepreneurship and green career? So, largely speaking, I think that's something that resonates with me because personally, like I mentioned, I'm a teacher, and at the same time, I do, radio programs, and largely speaking, the climate radio programs focuses on, we have three segments. One, climate education. Second segment is on green entrepreneurship. And the third segment is largely on opportunity. So what we do is we open young people up to opportunities within the green space, and then the second segment, we actually teach them on, starting green businesses, having a career in the green economy, and so on. And this is exactly what teachers or educators can do. one, educators need to, the first thing, like other speakers have mentioned, we and teachers or educators generally have to understand and know or be trained that when you say career, it's not just becoming a doctor, a lawyer, and all of those things. Yeah, those things are wonderful and great, but beyond that, we have career pathways within the green sector, and it is not just environmental. In Nigeria, we understand that environmental people officers that just go about. No, it's not that. Beyond that, you can make a career. Even you can start sustainable businesses that will employ millions, that will employ tens, hundreds, thousands of people, and of course grossing millions. So the first thing is teachers or educators would need to first have a mindset shift that there is actually a career when it comes to the green sector. That's the first thing. They themselves must first have a mindset shift, which will come from training and retraining, just like Mr. Olatunji mentioned. And then after that, educators will need to make their students to understand that. Like I mentioned initially, I said educators are people who guide people into something. So let's say they are like people that guide others into truth. So they have to guide their students into understand that yes, there are career pathways. You don't have to be a medical doctor. You don't have to be an engineer alone. No, there are other pathways. There are careers within the green space. And after doing this, they don't just say it that you can be a this or you can be. No, they now have to go beyond just telling them and guiding them, but opening them up to opportunities within the green space. For example, maybe connecting your students to internship opportunities, maybe with, let's say you have a recycling companies across countries, whether in Nigeria, and you might know one or two persons that run maybe some little recycling. If you have a student that is interested in that, can fix it, maybe during summer, the student can go there and learn how to recycle all of those things and pick it up. So connect them with opportunities, funding opportunities. Yes, there are opportunities for secondary school students when it comes to climate change, maybe essay competitions on environment where they can make money, or maybe for projects, little projects, and then they can do people within the school. You also help them do that. So yes, educators can be the one in understanding themselves, then teaching them understand that there are career pathways, maybe being a green a recycler, energy consultant, all of those things, green energy consultant, and many other career pathways. You can even be a climate communicator. You can be a climate journalist. There are lots of career
All right,
opportunities
thank
within the
you.
green space, but educators will have to up to it. Yeah.
Thank,
So
thank you
thank
very
you.
much. I was about asking you about you should name the careers opportunities, the green careers in climate change, and you already named them. Thank you very much. And my question last to Mr. Olatunyi. Can you share an example of an educator? Can you share an example of educator climate leader? Can you share an example of an educator or institution that have inspired meaningful climate action? Can you share an example of an educator or institution that has inspired meaningful climate action?
Okay, thank you for that question. Thank you for that question. So what I'm going to say, I'm speaking from Nigeria. And in Nigeria, a lot has been happening in regard to this question. I will mention University of Lagos has been doing a massive work in this regard. First, what University of Lagos did in the midst of this climate crisis, and by the way, Nigeria as a country has taken a resolve to take a lead to early adopt what is called sustainability reporting. Sustainability reporting, which is, there are two standards that was raised by the Institute of International Sustainability Standard Board, IFRS 1 and S2. So Nigeria decided sometime in 2023 to early adopt those standards. So what it means is that in Africa, Nigeria is placing a demand on the private sector to be able to be accounting for what they are doing to be able to ensure that the environment is fine in the light of their activities. That to say that a typical company, their objective for being in business is basically to make profit. But is that what sustainability reporting is requiring is that beyond the profit, they should now be reporting what happens to the environment after they made the profit, what happens to their people, what happens to their governance strategy. You get what I mean? So because of that, now University of Lagos have to now decide that 55 courses in University of Lagos, they deliberately inculcated sustainability into those courses. What that means is that it changed the game from what we used to know. Say for example, I take law for example. When we talk about issue of climate justice, lawyers need to now understand that beyond just you coming and defending whoever you need to defend, you need to now understand that you have a role, and except lawyers take it personal. People will be, be in business, be making profit at the expense of the climate, and lives will be in danger, and they won't get justice. And it is because of this move that University of Lagos decided to do, and they are even leading the charge, and as examples across other institutions in Nigeria. Other than that, I would say I know Babcock University also is doing a lot of work along this line. And then I think Covenant University is doing a bit of some work in that regard.
Okay.
That's what I think those are the three schools I can say largely talking about higher institutions. But if I go to secondary school institutions, it's still a bit of a lot of struggle. We are still advocating and pressing and placing a demand on the Ministry of Education just to make sure that this thing is intentionally inculcated into all our
Okay.
subjects.
All right.
So
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that wonderful explanation, and it was really insightful. And my question to Madam Precious Muriel, are you still with us? Uh, this is my last question before we move to the question and answering session. My last question to you, ma'am. How can educators transform climate education from a theoretical subject into practical community action?
I think I've answered that already.
Oh,
That's
you've
your first
asked already.
question.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
No. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Just can you answer this question in the comments? The person says, I have a question. How must how must government react to make education in phase with a development to introduce climate education through technologies?
Yeah, sure. I've answered that in the chat box as well. But for my answer, I think we cannot sacrifice our environment, our humanity, for the sake of the development that we are seeking. For example, in the context of building villages, uh, we are cutting trees. So it's important that we balance it out. For example, we are producing housing accommodation for the citizens, for the constituent, for our constituents, but we are also protecting the environment. So it's important that we do not sacrifice our environment for the sake of the development that we are aiming, because after all, we will not have a future if we destroy our environment. So it's important that our government has policies has effective policies when it comes to protecting our environment while also aiming for development.
All right, thank you very much. And the next question here is this question anybody can answer, please. Who is well placed to promote climate education in a country system? Anybody can answer this question. Who is well placed to promote climate education in a country system?
All right. Okay, go on, Mr. Latunji, you can go on.
Okay. Thanks so much, Mr. Ayomipo. Say to respond to that question is basically to say that SDG 13 speaks to climate action, but target 13 of 1 talks about integrating climate policies, climate change into policies and planning, climate change measures, integrating it into policies and planning. So what that means is this, there's not much we can do except climate action is integrated into our policies and our planning. What that means is it goes across ministries, from Ministry of Environment to Ministry of Finance. By the way, Ministry of Finance is doing a lot in that regard. In Nigeria, in particular, I can speak to because in Nigeria there is a tax reform, a major tax reform that was done recently. In that tax reform, there are some insertions of sessions in that the reform that is speaking to the fact that Nigeria, they mean business as relates to climate action. And that's the way. That's for fiscal policy. For monetary policy, I can also tell you for free, because in Nigeria, the Central Bank of Nigeria is a member of a coalition of central banks, greening the financial sector. So what they do is to say, typical banks, we want to fund, projects that are for the carbon intensive industries. Typical banks, that's what they do. But now, what CBN is now doing is to be adopting what is called a discretionary, cash reserve ratio. A discretionary cash reserve ratio means that for typical cash reserve ratio that you have, if you are a bank that you are funding green investments, they will reduce your cash reserve ratio so that you have more money to be able to fund that green investment. But if you're a bank whose a typical loan you give is to carbon intensive industries, the cash reserve ratio you have will be high, to say you should have little money to be able to fund fossil fuel powered industry. And what that means is that move alone have a multiplier effect on the economy in general. You get what I mean? So what all of this it means is that there's not much we can do if we silo, move that government should do by saying it's just Ministry of Environment. There's not much you can do. There has to be a coordinated effort from the Ministry of Finance to the central bank, Ministry of Finance speaking to the fiscal policy, to the central bank speaking to the monetary policy, to the Ministry of Environment in themselves. You get what I mean? It's that including Ministry of Agri, because there are a lot of things that are happening beyond just the climate crisis. Also talking about biodiversity loss, also talking about pollution issues, and all of that. So that's what I would say in that regard. I don't know if I've answered the question, right?
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Yomi Po. Can you want to add something, please?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Thanks, Mr. Olatunji, and thanks, ma'am. All right. Great question asked by the person that asked the question. I think, in addition to what you have said, I think he came from the institutional and agency angle. But then, in addition to what he has mentioned, I would just say, when it comes to climate change, largely speaking, climate change is the responsibility of every human being on earth. So, largely speaking, the question coming that primary was the who is responsible for the solution, whether to promote, who is well placed to promote climate education in a country system. I would say everybody that has an input in the educational system is well placed to promote climate education, and that includes, of course, government as the head and central this thing, which flows through agency. Now, government acts through its machinery and arms and tools and so on, where we have maybe ministries and then agencies and so on. And of course, you cannot leave out what they call, there's something called social accountability. Now, everybody is expected to do something to ensure that the society works well. A country or a society is not owned by the government, it's owned by the people. And government is just a fraction or a fragment of the people. We also have the institution of the people. So everybody has something to do. So as an educator, you have something to do. As a young person, you have something to do. as, let's say, a lawyer, you have something to do. As an influencer, you have something to do. As a an owner of a firm, just like you said, enterprise chiefs, they have things to do. In terms of for firms now, we'll be talking about ESG, that is, which of course, just like Mr. Olachi mentioned, we'll be talking about ESG reporting and all of those things, environment, social and governance, whereby firms have to take into account that their production and activities must not negatively impact the environment, which we call externality within the, the corporate world, and the economics, you say externality, negative externality. So firms have their own job to do. Individuals cannot do the job of firms. Firms have to ensure that their externality is curtailed. So if you know that your production will affect the environment, you try to reduce that or remove it anyways it works. Or maybe you have a way to do what they call pollution tax and all of those in Pigovian tax and so on. That is for enterprise. Now for individual, each person has something to do. No matter what educators do, if individually you are going on the street and you drop a nylon sachet plastic, there's nothing an educator will do to that. So you have something to do as an individual. NGOs have something to do, so they have to they have to advocate. A parent might not have the platform to advocate, but an NGO will have the platform to advocate. Parents who need to teach their children basic things when it comes to being responsible members of the society. And students will also have something to do in terms of inculcating the ideas, taking it and using it productively. Even skill-based educations like cooking, more, they also have something to do. So churches should teach members to not do what they ought not to do. And of course, the owners of businesses and educators and so we are all members of one church or a mosque or whatever faith or religious institution. So everybody has something to do. So it is not based in anybody. Churches are most everybody will have to teach climate education. NGOs,
All right. Thank
educators
you.
will have
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
to
so much, Mr. Ayomipo, for that wonderful insight. Thank you very much for that wonderful explanation to that question. And do we have any other question? Any other question? If you want to ask question, can you identify by a show of hands so I can call you up so you can unmute your mic and speak? Okay, so I take this as a no question. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ayomipo. You have something to say? You want to say something, Mr. Ayomipo? Your hands are still up.
Yeah, sorry. Initially, I would have loved to add to, like giving examples of maybe individuals, educators, or institutions that are championing climate education and all of those things. But, I was not the one who answered the question. And then another question came after that. I would have loved to have one or two. Of course, I have examples of educators, secondary school. Scholarship talk about institutions, yeah, very correct and wonderful. And there are also examples of secondary schools doing that. I think at least in Lagos, Nigeria, there are secondary schools that are doing it. I think I know of one or two schools in really Lagos that they do it too much. They have sustainable farms, they do waste management in their school. They don't throw they have different sections, they sort their waste. I think a school in Surulere, Bele Community High School, really, and of course, there's a teacher there who is very, that's what she does. Apart from other things she does, she's very vested in that and builds up climate champions who are students. I think basically something is an implement. So that's an example. And secondary schools in Lagos are doing, yeah, very well. Secondary schools in Lagos are trying as much. I hope other schools across the world can also do it. Secondary and primary schools, very important, even beyond the institutions. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Uh, I take this silence as I already asked if there's any other questions, and I take the silence as a no question. So at this point, I'll be handing over to the Mayor Foundation. Please